Hi, welcome, I'm SimUK. This is my review on Strategic Mind the Pacific, which was sent to me for review purposes. And I can say, without a shadow of a doubt, this is a good game, a really good game, if you like your tactical World War II turn-based combat sims. But it's not all perfect, I'll be honest with you. The tactical element of this game wins out. It makes this game worth a purchase, but I was trying to think of a really good analogy of how to describe this game, and the best I came up with was this is like a two-sided coin. One side has been polished to make the coin look new, but the other side has been kind of neglected and a little bit dirty and grubby. Now thankfully there's enough polish and shine on the good side that the other side doesn't destroy what is a good game, but for some people it's definitely going to be something they notice, and maybe for some people it'll be too much. This is an extreme strategic game. This is not a pick up and play casual kind of gaming experience. This is hard. This is really a tactical experience where you're going to have to think and plan and guess and predict in order to win out. There's a bunch of fringe element issues, the camera movement, the UI, the cutscenes and the dialogue. I'm not kidding you, Scooby-Doo is in this game. But still, with all of that, the shiny side wins out. It's so good on the good side that the terrible stuff isn't enough to put me off this game. I'm going to tell you all about it. There's a lot to discuss in this review, so grab yourself a cuppa, you might be here for a little while. The game was developed and published by Stani Games. They previously released Panzer Strategy, a game that I reviewed and enjoyed a great deal. Strategic Mind the Pacific was released on the 25th of October 2019, and at the moment on Steam it will cost you £23.79, which incidentally is exactly the same price as Panzer Strategy. Now the format for this is single player only, which means no multiplayer at all, which is a real shame because this game is perfectly set for a wonderful multiplayer campaign battle, and I really, really wish they would think about implementing that. So, what is the game about? Well, Strategic Mind the Pacific is a turn-based strategy game set in the World War II Pacific Theatre. It's between the USA and the Empire of Japan, and it's basically all waged war in the ocean. You can take command of both sides of the conflict, and there's an entire campaign for each of them. And whilst the campaign is quite linear in many ways, it can also be dynamic too. I'll discuss this all much more as we get further through the review. The core element of the game is large-scale naval battles using carrier ships, destroyers, aircraft, subs, landing craft. There are periods where you will have to fight on land as well as sea and air.
Keep firing.
You get to manage your fleet between missions in a kind of semi-permadeath state, but that only applies to core ship elements and not the non-core ship elements, which are basically expendable. It's quite weird. Again, I'll discuss that in more detail in a bit. You get to decide which ships, submarines and aircraft will constitute the bulk of your force, but again, only to a point, depending on which current mission you're in. And any core units that survive can receive unit customization. This is leveling up new skills. You can add additional cargo capacity or fuel capacity, for example. Loads of stuff that you can do. The naval battle system is really very detailed for this type of genre. The ships are actually modular. They have modular components. So the armament, the hull, the engine, the flight deck, the AA guns and the hull, which I've already mentioned, they all combine to make up the HP of a ship. But you can target certain areas. So you can target the AA guns, allowing you air supremacy, or you can damage the ship's engine, which will reduce its speed. Now, by reducing a ship's overall speed, you reduce the distance at which they can travel each turn. This means that they become easier prey for the rest of your flotilla, and thus all of their defences are lowered. Basically, the ship's overall defence score is linked directly to speed, and I guess it's because The faster you travel, the harder you are to hit. The slower you travel, the more damage you're likely to take. And I think that's the decision that they've made.
Moving carefully.
You also have a HQ unit, which can be applied to any one of your core ships, but only can be changed at the end of a campaign. And you get these commander points, which permit you to use skills. These skills can be purchased throughout the campaign, and they can be deployed in order to turn the tide of a battle, or just give you a slight edge. The game runs with semi-modern graphics and animations for this type of genre, and many historically accurate units, all very nicely modelled, I have to say. And the storyline is told throughout using what I can only describe as an elaborate and historically accurate cutscene. Much more on this later. The developers say there's no pre-made DLC nonsense here. It's going to get long-term support, and they are likely to make some additional content in the future, but they never said whether or not that was going to be free or in form of a DLC. So the game at the moment, I have to mention it, it's pretty much full of bugs. At release, there were loads of bugs by all accounts. Most of them seem to have been fixed, and the developers are definitely very vocal and very good at giving feedback and updates on what they've fixed and what they're focusing on next. I've experienced only a couple of bugs, I have to say. In one instance, I was unable to deploy some of my land units, and one of the ships somehow ended up getting stuck underneath the map. Not entirely sure how that happened. And there's a lot of audio bugs in the game, mostly present throughout the cutscenes and the tutorial guides. If there's a long bit of dialogue, then the end of it will get cut off very abruptly, and there's a lot more issues to do with audio as well, which I'll discuss in a bit too. Sometimes I simply cannot action something that I think I should be able to. Now, it's such a complex, difficult game that it's highly likely that I've just not fully understood how it works, and there's a reason why I can't do something I'm trying to do. But because there are so many bugs, there's also a chance that it's a bug. I rather think it's me not getting it right, but there are issues like this, and these are issues that you're going to face, so that's why I'm mentioning them. It either is a bug, which will cause you problems, or it's a complex learning curve that I haven't quite mastered, and you're going to have the same experience. So just bear that in mind. That's all I'm saying there, really. Now, the UI is, user interface is something I studied at university, so I know all about it. And what I know for damn sure is that I am terrible at designing UI. I know how it all works. I know what needs to be done. I can see the problems, but I also know how difficult it is to design a decent UI. And in a game like this, with so much information and so much depth, you end up having this really complex system that you need to learn as a result. And it will take you time to learn not only where everything is, but what everything does. And then when you know where everything is and what it does, then you've got to figure out when is best to use it and how to use it. There's a few issues I've noticed around positioning on the correct hex. So the whole map is made up of these hex squares. Accidental positioning in this game could be absolutely catastrophic. I mean, it could be the difference between a win and a loss. And in pretty much every single battle that I've had, I have at least once, if not multiple times, accidentally clicked on a hex or a unit when I'm trying to do something else. And the reason why that happens is because everything is done with the left click button. And I mean everything. Skip dialogue, select a unit, move a unit, change a unit, upgrade a unit, level up a unit, HQ, there's so much. And when you think that there can be, let's think about this logically, there can be up to 2 units on a single square at a time. I think I'm correct in saying that. So you could have an air unit and a ground unit, or a sea unit. So trying to click on the hex, which is underneath, with a ship on it and an aeroplane, can often be a problem. And what's worse than that is that if you're aiming in the absolute dead center of a hex square and you move 1 pixel to the right or the left, you may well end up in the next hex completely. So I mean, that really is a problem. I think personally, I would say split up the controls, because the right mouse button at the moment gives you information about the hex square that you're looking at, or the unit that's on the hex square that you're looking at. That could be any other button. It really could. I think they should split up movement with selection. So left click to select, right click to move. It would fix so many problems for me personally. Some of the animations, I've got to say, are pretty uncomfortable. The main problem, I'll be honest, the animations themselves are actually pretty much okay. I would like to see ships actually sink. That would be lovely. But at the moment they just explode and disappear. But okay, besides that, the explosions and the animations are pretty good. But the camera, after an animation, spins round rather recklessly. I think it's trying to reorientate itself to the front of the ship that you're using, and it always seems to pick the wrong way of doing it, and it's horrible to look at. It's so bad that I would actually like to be able to turn off the animations. I don't want to. You can skip them, but I would quite like to turn them off completely, because of that horrible camera transition that happens after it. It's really quite nasty. I don't like it at all. You also have to wait for animations to complete before you can make your next move. Now that might not seem like a significant thing, but it really slows down the game, and I find it incredibly frustrating. It's most frustrating when I'm trying to land my aircraft. Now if I've got 3, 4, maybe 5 aircraft in the air and I'm trying to land them all at the same time, I have to wait so long for the animation for them to fly to where they're going, then shrink down onto the landing platform before I can even think about doing anything else. And there's even a good 1.5 seconds, 2 second delay after it's done that before I can then click on the next unit. And that in itself has caused me a few problems when I think an animation is finished and I click on a new unit, and it looks like I've clicked on the new unit and I'm trying to move it, but actually it's gone back to the previous unit. And then when I try and move the unit I think I have control of, I basically get the aeroplane that I've just landed to refuel back up in the air again before it's even ready. So there are a few issues around controls that are quite frustrating. It doesn't happen every time. It does happen too often. That's about all I can say on that, really. Now, I've mentioned the audio issues with this game. Some of the long dialogues do cut short at the end, and it happens a lot. Now, this is clearly a bug, an issue that they're going to need to deal with. But I mean, that all pales into insignificance when you realise how good and bad the voice acting is in this. The tutorial narrator I think is okay, and the tutorial itself is very, very good. I don't think it goes far enough, but it's a good start, certainly.
Step down the pipe in olive drab and
But the individual units, like the actual characters, the ships themselves, they also have some voice audio on there as well, and they're not so good. And I mentioned earlier that Scooby-Doo is in the game, and he is. I'm not kidding. It sounds exactly like Scooby-Doo. It's ridiculous.
Oh? How'd you see us?
How'd you see us? It sounds like flipping Yoda. Some of the things that they say are hilarious. Some of them are just ridiculous. But it's going to be like Marmite. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And since I've been playing it, I've been on both sides of the fence with this one. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I hate it. I mean, it's unbelievably bad that it almost goes through hating it into loving it. Do you know what I mean? That kind of weird scenario where there's a cult waiting at the end. That's what it's like here. I think it's very unlikely it's going to change, so that's something you're going to have to either deal with, or a lot of people have shunned the game specifically because of the audio, the voice acting and the dialogue and scripting that's in this game.
I consider it my duty to remind you that I always consider this fancy plan of yours an unjustified gamble. We must proceed with time-tested methods, not some fantasies.
Time-tested methods are great if the opponents have equal strength. We, on the other hand, have to make a miracle for Japan to come out victorious after this war.
Aye, aye, Admiral.
Ogaki, please provide our diplomats with the exact timing of the upcoming attack. They have to make public our declaration of war before we begin the attack.
Consider it done.
Individual unit gun, audio, explosions, etc. Pretty acceptable. Some is better than others, but overall I'd say it was okay for a game of this genre. The graphics and animation of units I think is good, just like its predecessor was, maybe even a little bit better, a little bit sharper. And there's a nice combination of close-up and distant design attributes. You can scroll in using the mouse, or quite often the game will automatically move you in close for a, maybe when you're taking a large ship out, it will zoom in for you. Some of the animated unit movement is concluded with a camera sweep, as I've mentioned already. And I really do not like the camera sweep. I find it awful. It makes me want to turn off the animations completely, which is something I never thought I'd say with a game like this. I do like the ocean. It's not static. There are moving fish and whales and sort of reeds and all sorts of other things going on there. It's a nice touch. It's better than having a completely static, dead ocean scene below you. It's not over the top. It's just a nice little touch there. A nice bit of polish, I would say. Now, a lot of time and effort has been placed into the cutscenes. It's fair to point that out. They really have made huge amounts of effort, but there's quite a lot of them, and they last quite a long time, and they do set the scene, and they are effectively critically important. I haven't figured out whether or not they're skippable, I'll be honest. They might be skippable, and if they're not, they should be. But in contrast to the overall game's look and feel, the voice acting is really, really subpar. The scripting is also pretty lackluster, and with regards to the Japanese cutscene specifically, it kind of comes across as rather politically motivated. And in comparison to the American cutscenes, which, other than being absolutely ridiculous, they seem to be quite rhetorical. It's strange what they've done here. It really is. Americans sound Australian, the Japanese sound I don't know, Welsh or something? No, they're not Welsh. I can't remember what they sound like. But certainly, they sound more American than the Americans, I think it's fair to say. But it's quite strange. All of it is quite strange, to be honest with you.
Oh my god, it is worse than in the newspapers. Oklahoma, capsized, 429 dead. Arizona, exploded, 1,177 dead. We have lost so many brave seamen, and it all happened in 1 hour.
Now, each unit has their own strategic strengths, abilities and weaknesses. For example, you can move a sub into an attack position, fire, and then move away. What a lot of people do, and I made this mistake at the beginning, is to move, fire, and then you've got no move points left, so you end up staying in the same place. That's not the way to do it. And that's what I mean about the tactical element of this game. That really does need to be taken into consideration. And each unit as well has a bunch of skills and abilities that extend their own personal capabilities. So some of the ships and some of the destroyers will have these seaplanes that you can send out to scout for enemy units. That's so important, but you only have 3 per ship, and they don't seem to come back, I've noticed, which I thought was quite odd, especially for the aircraft carrier. I would have thought they would have come back, but they don't. They seem to go out and then stop, and that's it, and that's all they do. Quite odd. I'm not sure I agree with that particular decision.
Naval Intelligence Officer Lieutenant Commander Layton, reporting for duty as ordered, sir.
At ease, Lieutenant Commander. Give me the situation report.
The Japanese carrier task force is headed in a...
read the report, Layton. I am interested in the officer's mood, not the statistics.
Well, after everything that happened, sir, everyone expects to be relieved of duty.
Now, I've got to say the tutorial is pretty excellent. There's an awful lot to discuss in this game, and the tutorial certainly does a good job of getting you up and running, but it doesn't cover everything. Apparently there were some bugs in the tutorial itself, which the devs, I believe, they've definitely responded to, and I believe they fixed them. I certainly haven't been affected by it, so I assume that that's been fixed. But like I say, the game is incredibly in-depth, and the tutorial does a pretty good job of explaining everything. At least the basics, and the information that you need just to get yourself going. It's so deep and so complex, this game, that throughout the campaign you will continue to get tutorials and information about units and just updates the first time you click on them, for example. Now, I've mentioned already that the left mouse click button does absolutely everything, and it causes problems. One of the areas where it does cause problems is in the tutorial itself. You do at times have to click on the left mouse button in order to skip to the next tutorial element, but also you have to click on some units in order to move them to do what they're asking you to do. So if you accidentally double click on a unit, you will skip the next part of the tutorial, and as far as I can see, there's no way of going back to the previously mentioned thing. So once again, you know, it's a conflict there. They could so easily have the space bar or any other button skip the tutorial, but they've just kind of bundled everything onto the left mouse button, which is a bit of a pain in the ass, and it does cause a few issues as a result. Some of the phraseology in the tutorial is convoluted and confusing, to be totally honest with you. At one point I thought they were making up words. Disembarkation, which actually is a real word. Who knew? But when I looked it up, I think they should have possibly picked the word debarkation in the context which they were using, but that's neither here nor there. It seems much is not covered in the main tutorial, and instead, as I've mentioned, during the gameplay, the campaign itself, when you first select a unit, it will tell you important information about that. But refer back to my earlier statement about how if you accidentally click your left mouse button on a unit when they're talking, you will skip that tutorial part, and you can't go back, and you won't hear what they were going to say. So there are a few little issues there that they could fix, but this is just my perspective. Now, I'm not entirely sure how deployment, resources and logistics really work and how things are really affected, because, I mean, I have a grasp, I think I understand, I think I get it, but so far nothing has covered it in the tutorial, and I've played a good, I don't know how many hours, 16 hours, something like that, quite a bit of time I've put into this game.
Reconnaissance is our job. Martial arts is our hobby.
There's also no mention of important things like flashing stars, which indicate that one of your units has a level up opportunity. The problem with the icons like that is they're so small. They don't really stand out very much, so it's easy to miss them completely, which again is a UI design issue, and I think they could just address these problems and make things like that more obvious. Another thing that they didn't mention is that the HQ can be placed on one of your core units, and it can be swapped between units if you want to. So if you've got it on your aircraft carrier, you can swap it to your destroyer or vice versa. So far that hasn't been mentioned in the tutorial at all, and I just happened to watch one of the devs playing some of the game and he did it, and I was like, oh, I did not know you could do that. So, and this is why I say, you know, I've put quite a few hours into this game. And it's hard, trust me, it's not an easy game. I've played it on easy and I've played it on hard, and they're both hard. They're both hard. And what I suppose whilst we're talking about, let's talk about gameplay and balance, the AI difficulty. So the difficulty of the AI settings range from 40% AI strength up to 150%. So you've got your 100% units and they can match you 100%, 100%. The easy setting is they have 40% of the units that you have, and the hard setting is that they have 150% of the units you have. Now, I haven't played on the super hard setting because playing on 100% was bloody hard enough. I did win, but my god did I work for it, and I came away with a bloody nose and hardly any units left. So I mean, it is tough, it's really tactically difficult. Now, although the game is historically set and they're trying to be historically accurate, I'm not sure which difficulty setting is historically accurate, and I think they should consider having a historically accurate setting where it is pre-configured to be whatever the situation was at the time at the time in the real world event. That doesn't exist at the moment. I'm assuming it's 100%, but I mean, that doesn't actually make any sense if you think about it. Pearl Harbor knocked out 50% of the American flotilla. So really, historically accurate would be that they have maybe 150% against you, something like that. I don't really know. They'd have to do the calculations. I'm sure they've got the calculations, and I wish they would set up something that allowed us to play historically accurately as a game. So there's 5 levels of pre-built difficulty, which is customizable, as I've mentioned already. The AI strength, the prestige that you receive for a win, and the cost of reinforcements can all be adjusted in the customizable setting. The AI tactical awareness, though, doesn't appear to be adjustable at all. So they're going to be exactly the same as in every difficulty. It's just that the numbers of units will be different, and the cost of units and the prestige that you get back will be different. That's the only change that really in the game. Most games tend to have AI intelligence adjustments, but no, in this case it's just numbers, just a numbers game. So any losses that you incur when you're fighting the enemy kind of transition. Now, I've mentioned already, there are core units and non-core units. The core units are with you throughout the entire campaign if you can keep them alive, and you can upgrade them and rank them up, etc. But there are a lot of non-core units that even if you keep them alive in the battle, they're probably not going to be there in the next one. You can't rank them up and so on and so forth. It's a bit of a confusing situation. I'm not sure, I'm not entirely sure I 100% have this down, because it is really quite complicated, and there's so far I have not seen a decent tutorial, and I'm all about making tutorials. I'm quite happy to do that, but this is all I know at the moment. I think I've got it, but as I mentioned earlier, I think I have it, and then I go to do something and it's like, oh, I can't do that. Why can't I do that? I'm not entirely sure why I can't do that. I thought I could do that. And that's where I am with the game. And that's I really have put a lot of time and effort. I've played about 16 hours, but I've also invested probably another 16 hours in watching other people play, tutorials, reading the manual. The manual's not very good, by the way. It's just text. There's no visual information there at all. I think they should upgrade that. But yeah, it's just a very confusing game. There's so much going on. There are so many components to the game that can implement and interfere with what you're trying to do. It's in depth. It really is. That's why the shiny side is so shiny. That's what I'm saying. The AI is very challenging, just like its predecessor was. Very challenging, even on the easiest setting. But it does have quite a linear gameplay from what I've experienced. Now each level is, you're looking at half an hour to an hour, maybe longer, depending on how the battle goes. So it's not a quick game by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, it certainly seems to be like when you start a level, everything will be exactly as it was the last time you started. And maybe over the period of the battle, it will be slightly dynamic, but effectively you can kind of guarantee that they're going to do the same thing at the same time. So you can preempt that if you play it a couple of times over, which is, it's historically accurate, I guess, but I would rather it be slightly more dynamic. Maybe, at the beginning of a campaign be like that, but as the campaign progresses, let's be more dynamic. Let's have every unit is a core unit. There's permadeath, and, make your own history. That's what I'd like to see, but it's not quite, it doesn't quite do that. It kind of does that in bits and areas, but not all over. So each unit, ships, aircraft, etc. have independent HP points. You can destroy certain elements of a ship, as I mentioned before, the runway on an aircraft carrier, the guns on an aircraft carrier, the anti-aircraft, the engines. The hull is another area altogether. The hull can be attacked with torpedoes, either from the air or submarines or from destroyers. And the hulls can be... See, I'm not 100% sure. There's a lot where I'm not 100% sure. I'm really sorry. The hulls can be at times repaired. You can also upgrade the ability that you have to repair torpedo hulls and repair 2 at a time. So each turn you can repair 1, but if you get the upgrade you can repair 2. But the hull damage itself will remain. So you cannot fix the hull. You can just stop the holes from being present, which I assume slows the ship down or something like that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it continues damaging the hull. I haven't quite figured out how it exactly works, and there's no information about it. But I really like the way that it's sort of modular in that sense. You can specifically attack a unit's hull and engines, and slow it right down, and then it can't escape you, and then you can focus on taking out the units around it before you come back and finish it off. So from that perspective, it's really good. I just don't fully understand how it all works yet. It's quite complicated. Move points are added to overall defense. I think I mentioned that already as well. I found that quite confusing at first, but then I kind of get it now. It's like a stranded ship is more likely to get hit, so that's why I'm okay with that. That makes sense to me. There is a way that you can kind of cheat, I've noticed. So when you're at the end of a mission, when you've achieved enough points to complete a mission, if you have any units that are just about to die, like in the enemy's next turn, they're going to sink your big ship, or maybe some of your aircraft have run out of fuel and they're going to crash in the sea and they're going to die. If you end the mission there, all of those units that would have otherwise died are absolutely fine. Now that's not technically a cheat, but it's kind of a cheat. And I don't know if I like it or not, to be honest with you. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But I'm not sure which way round would be better. So I'm interested in your thoughts on that. Also, ships have multiple ways of attacking units. They do have anti-aircraft guns. They have a main gun, a secondary gun. They have sonar. They have, what else do they have? They have depth charges. There's an awful lot that each ship has. They don't all have this. It's ship type specific. And yeah, so when it's your turn, you can hit ships with multiple different weapons at the same time, which is really cool. And I do like that. Again, it's a really good tactical aspect of the game, but you must remain in supply, otherwise you're going to run out of ammo, which is something I'm still trying to master. As you progress through the game, you can rank up and level up units and systems and expand the capacity that they have, and the like you can get armor piercing shells, you can get explosive shells, so you can set fires on the deck, which does double damage, I believe, if you're trying to take out some of the specific areas of a ship. You can use incendiary devices, and that'll actually do more damage to the AA guns, for example. And it's really complex and deep, this game. This is why I said to you, I think I'm going to miss things, and I apologise if I do. There's a night and day cycle that has implications when fighting at night. You're less visible, your targeting is going to be less accurate, so you're going to do less damage. I think there's a similar thing going on when it rains. Certainly when it's raining, it makes it harder to see, which I kind of like, because that's kind of more realistic. I mean, it's physically harder to see what you're doing, so I kind of like that, weirdly. There's also periods where I know a unit is there, but they're so camouflaged with their surrounding that they're really hard to spot. And because they're so hard to spot, you forget they're there, and then you step out of your safe space and they blow your bloody head off. Now, some people will find that incredibly annoying. I kind of like it, because they're camouflaged. It makes sense. I'm not entirely sure though. So yeah, there's lots of locations. I'm not going to go through all of them. Also, there's Pearl Harbor, there's the Battle of the Coral Sea, there's the Panama Canal, there's lots more. There's lots and lots. All the major battles are included here. So some of the game modes that I would like to see that aren't here, obviously I've mentioned multiplayer, a skirmish mode, a challenge mode, maybe just some more tutorial aspects would be nice, but yeah, not so good. It's just got the one game style, and that's the campaign. You can play from either Japanese or US perspective, but that's it really. There's not much else to say about that. Competitors to this game, I don't know, SSI, Product Pacific General, I believe has been mentioned a few times by a few people. Battle Academy 2 is another one. I haven't played either of those, so I can't really compare them to it, but that's the kind of game that you're going to get here. And obviously Panzer Strategy, although it's in a different strategic location, it's a very similar sort of gameplay style. So if you've played Panzer Strategy, you kind of know what you're getting here. It's ramped up a bit. I think there's a lot more going on, and I'm certainly a lot more engaged with this than I was with Panzer Strategy, but I really liked Panzer Strategy, so bear that in mind as well. So guys, I can only apologise. I have literally poured hours into this review already, and I know there's stuff I don't know, but I have I only have a certain amount of time and resources available to me, and I've run out of time on this game. It's a great game. It has some issues. I think I've highlighted all the important stuff. I've probably forgotten some really key things, and I feel like a right Wally. But on the most part, this game, if you like turn-based World War II strategy, this game ticks a lot of boxes, for me at least. And yeah, I'm interested to know what you guys think about it, so let me know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. Please hit that like button, the old thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, feel free to subscribe. I don't display how many subscriptions I don't display how many subs I have on the channel, because quite frankly it's pointless. It means nothing at all. I'll quite happily tell you I've got 16.5, nearly 16.5, nearly 17,000 subs at the moment, and most of my videos get less than 100 views, and then randomly I'll get one that gets 45,000. I've got one that's heading up for 500,000 views. So quite literally, subs mean nothing. So I've just turned it off, not because I'm being secretive, but because I used to care about how many subs I have, and now it just doesn't mean anything, so I don't care. I don't look at it. There's no point in even displaying it as far as I'm concerned. A few people have asked me, so I thought I'd just clarify that here. Thank you for watching. Take care. I'm going now. Bye. Have a lovely Christmas. Bye for now.